Hi everybody, Fred the Pirate here, and this is a review for Game of Thrones Season 3, Episode 2, entitled Dark Wings, Dark Words. So, a lot of interesting stuff happened this episode. I definitely thought this was a good episode because a lot of stuff happened and we learned some stuff. Um, so before I get started with reviewing it, the one character, two characters really that we didn't see that were kind of important were Dany. So we didn't see anything of her this week, and we didn't see Tywin, and we really didn't get a lot of, I guess, battle action in terms of the political clashing. Although we did get a fight, which will at the end of the episode, which I'll talk about later. All right, so pretty much what happens in the way this episode starts is we start with Bran out in the woods, and he's walking. So this is and he's hunting the three-eyed crow. And obviously, we figure out since Bran's walking that this is either a flashback or a dream, and it turns out that it's a dream. And so, in the dream, he's trying to hunt the three-eyed crow, but then a young man comes up to him and he said, you can't kill the crow because the crow is you. And then Bran wakes up and he's with his entourage. He's with Hodor, the giant mute guy, and he's with the lady who I forgot her name. So he's with her, and obviously with Rickon and the wolf. So that's so we start with him, and so we see him a couple times in the episode. And the episode is pretty much a Bran centric, so that was pretty cool. After we see Bran, we go to with Robb, and he's kind of just hanging out with his wife Talisa, and he doesn't really do much, so they're just kind of with each other. And then we find, and he gets interrupted by his guard, and he gets a letter where he finds out that his grandfather has died, and that Winterfell has been sacked and it's been burned, and that Bran and Rickon aren't there, but we kind of knew that. But now, Robb knows. So after we're with him, we jump to Jon, and he's with Mance Rayder, and so he asked Jon a little bit about, well, was it hard to kill the half-hand? And Jon was like, yeah. And, and Mance Rayder pretty much tells him, like, if you're fucking around with me, I'm not going to have any issue with killing me. So it's like, it might have been hard for you to kill the half-hand. It's not going to be hard for me to kill you. So he's like, if you're fucking with me, like, I'm going to kill you, and I'm not going to feel sorry about it. So that happens, and then, they exchange some words, and Jon says, I feel for you because, you have your people and you want to take care of them. And then Mance Rayder's like, well, you don't know what it's like to be me. Like, do you have any idea what it's like to have to comprise an army filled full of a bunch of tribes of people who hate each other? He mentions, like, I got a whole shitload of people under me. My army is comprised of people who speak 7 different languages. I have to deal with all of these clans where, one wants to kill the other, and he mentions, this one tribe hates this other tribe, and this other tribe hates this other tribe, and then he makes this joke that this one tribe, like, and everybody hates this one tribe. So it's like, and it's really hard, and and you can tell Jon hadn't thought about that, and that he really respects that, because it's hard to do that, and Jon really doesn't have any appreciation for that. So that was certainly interesting. And then a little bit after that, Mance Rayder along with Jon and Ygritte run into this guy who's got his eyes rolled back in his head, and it's obvious that he has some mystic abilities. And then I think Mance Rayder, or at least Ygritte, mentions that he has the ability to see what animals see, and that he's a warg, and which that's what you call people like Bran who can see through animals, and like this wildling guy. And so Ygritte mentions to Jon, like, you haven't met a warg before, and he looks really puzzled. So I think, as far as, I don't know if Jon's making the connection that Bran's a warg, or if he's just really puzzled, because I think it could be either of those things. But we do know that he has met a warg, whether he knows that or not, and so it'll be interesting if Bran's ever talked to Jon enough about his experiences for him to be able to put it together that Bran's a warg. And it was certainly really nice this episode to get a term for what Bran is, like, at least of what people who do what Bran does. And it's kind of cool to see that Bran's not the only one. So that it's definitely fun to see more of the mystical aspects of Game of Thrones, because they focus kind of a lot on the more practical aspects, because a lot of times, honestly, if the dragons weren't there, and if people like Bran and like Melisandre wasn't there, it essentially would just be a political drama that takes place in like a non-existent realm in the Middle Ages, and that, like, a lot of that's kind of a lot what a Game of Thrones is. And it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's certainly nice to see the fantasy elements of the show also. And I think when they're there, they're usually really nice, but I think it's nice to see a little bit more of it. Because after all, Game of Thrones is a fantasy show, so it's kind of nice to see the fantasy elements of it. And, magic is kind of a pretty cool element of fantasy. So with that said, after we deal with that, we cut ahead to well, actually, like, when the warg ends up getting out of his trance, and he mentions that he says, he's seen some, after he gets out of his trance, Mance Rayder asks him, like, well, what did you see? And he says, and he looks at Jon, and he's like, well, I saw some dead crows, which obviously are what they call the Night's Watchmen. And so with that said, we end up cutting back to the surviving Night's Watchmen, and we deal with a little bit of Sam being given some shit about, being fat and slow, and, eventually Sam kind of breaks down, and he, like, stops walking with them, and he's like, just leave me alone and let me die. And then his friends come back, and he's like, no, you need to get up. And he's like, you don't care about me, like, you left me. And the one guy's like, yeah, we did leave you with the White Walker, because, like, the White Walkers are coming, and, like, you're fat and you're slow, and it's like, we weren't gonna die trying to stay with your ass. And I was like, we didn't want to get killed by magic snow zombies. And so eventually, after that happens, the commander of the Night's Watch comes back, and he tells Sam to get up, and it's like, I command you to not die. And it's like, so, and then he tells this other fat guy with a scar, like, it's like, you're in charge of keeping him alive. And he's like, if he dies before we get back to the wall, you're gonna be dead. And so the one guy's like, I'm not dying for you. And so far, Sam starts walking, and, he's weary, but he gets up. So that was interesting. And it makes me wonder, we've seen Sam 2 episodes in a row, and usually we don't see a lot of Sam. So I wonder if if we're going to see exactly what the Night's Watch are going to be doing, because obviously in season 1 and season 2, the reason we spent a lot of time with them was because of Jon. And so now I'm wondering, exactly what they're going to be doing, and exactly how are we going to see them. And I guess I'm wondering if Sam is going to play a more prominent role in the Night Watch, so that way, I guess, that way we keep having a reason to go to the Night Watch and focus on them now that Jon's with the wildlings. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Then after that, I believe we go to King's Landing, and we see Joffrey trying on some clothes, and getting prepared for his and Margaery's wedding, and Cersei's talking to him, and she's asking him, well, what do you think about Margaery? And he talks about how it would be a really good match between the Lannisters and the Tyrells, and and their money and stuff, and that they'll be able to just wipe the floor with everybody. And Cersei's like, yeah, but like, what do you think about Margaery as a person? And Joffrey's just being obstinate, and kind of like, I don't want to have this conversation. And she's like, she's, you know, she seems to be really beautiful and really nice, but she's like, she seems to be oddly interested in helping people. And I guess it's interesting how Cersei definitely views Margaery being charitable as being, a bad thing. So it'll be like, so that was pretty interesting. It's like, apparently it's like that, it's not so much that just that she's suspicious of why she's being charitable, but it's just that she obviously thinks that it's a bad thing, although she is suspicious of Margaery. It's like, she's like, she was with Renly, and she kind of, she mentions that Margaery kind of dresses like a slut, so it's like, she obviously has ulterior motives for why she was with Renly, and now why she's with you. And it's like, you should probably be thinking about those. And I have to say, Cersei's definitely not one of the smartest characters in the show, but like, she does have times where she does make some pretty excellent points about stuff, and I think this is one of them. And I think, unfortunately, Joffrey's just being a little shit, and it's like, she does make a good point. It's like, dude, like, she obviously has ulterior motives for this shit. Like, and you should be figuring out why. And it's like, that's just something you should do as a person, but especially as a king, like, like, obviously a million people are gonna try to kiss your ass, but it's like, a lot of people have ulterior motives, and it's like, and you should be starting to get smart enough to think about that stuff and not just be a dumbass and be like, I'm the king of everything and I can do everything. And that's definitely gonna kick Joffrey's ass. It's like, you should definitely be thinking about that stuff. So after that happens, we go to Sansa, and Sansa and Shae are talking about Littlefinger, what he did. Uh, last episode, and Sansa pretty much thinks that Littlefinger's kind of there to help her. That he just likes her mom, and and Shae points out the fact that it's like, men kind of always, they want one thing. It's like they want pussy, and Shae kind of points out rather bluntly, it's like, he's not helping you because he's a good guy and he had a thing for your mom. And it's like, he helps you because he wants something from you. And especially since he didn't say, give me money or give me power or give me stuff, it's obvious that the thing that he wants from you is, your lady bits. And it's like, you need to think about that stuff. It's like you don't have an army and you don't have gold, and it's like this, and it sounded like, well, it's like he's so old. And Shae points out the fact, it's like, well, they don't see it like that. Like, that's what he wants. And I mean, and we know that Shae's right on the money with that. Like, Littlefinger isn't an altruistic person. He doesn't help people. He doesn't. Like, he wants shit from people, and he gets shit from people. And it's like, and if he does do stuff nice for somebody, he wants something in return. And I think, obviously, Shae's right on the money. It's like, what he wants from Sansa is, some nookies. So it's like, she better be on top of that stuff. And Shae mentions, you should just let me know what he does. And right after that happens, Loras comes in to take Sansa to have a luncheon thing with his sister and their grandmother. And so she goes to that, and it's a really nice luncheon. And I think, like, it's like, it almost seems like Sansa's having a normal moment for, an aristocrat, that she's doing what she assumed she would be doing in Westeros. But, quickly after that, Margaery and her grandmother, they're talking about, you know, um, Margaery's father and her grandfather, and her grandmother, like, is obviously this really sophisticated, really intelligent, well-read woman, and she doesn't pull any punches, and they talk about Renly, and she mentions that Renly, you know, was an idiot, and this is after, she says sorry to Sansa for her loss, and Sansa says, I'm sorry for the loss of Renly, and Lady Tyrell's pretty much like, he was a nice guy, but he was an idiot. Like, he had no place being a king, and he was a traitor. So it's like, he was an idiot who did idiot things. And she mentions, that her husband and her son are pretty much the same way. And so, through their luncheon, she talks to Sansa, like, what's Joffrey like? And we can see that Sansa's really concerned because, like, she doesn't know if she should trust them, like, at all. And I think it's interesting that this happened right after her talk with Shay with Littlefinger, and Shay kind of reminds her, it's like, you need to not be so trusting to people. And I think, honestly, I think she knows that Margaery's gonna marry King Joffrey, and she doesn't know what to do. And we see this, and even Margaery points out that she's really freaked out because she does not know what to tell these people, and she's conflicted really morally between telling Margaery and her grandmother the truth, but wondering if she does, if it'll come and bite her in the ass, and that she could get killed if she says anything. But eventually, Margaery and Lady Tyrell, convince her that, she's in safe hands. And she mentions to her that essentially that Joffrey is a monster. And Lady Tyrell says that's too bad. And honestly, that was an interesting meeting because I think it's really interesting to see Sansa get to know people, especially women who aren't like her mom and who aren't like Cersei. And, it's interesting for her to get a new image of, it's like you don't just have to be a wife and a mother like your mom, and you don't have to be, a psychotic lush the way Cersei is. It's like, that you, and the thing is that you don't have to be like a badass warrior chick either. It's like, you can be an intelligent, sophisticated, empowered political lady in a way that you really haven't been exposed to. And it'll be interesting to see if this conversation with the Tyrell women, has any profound impact on Sansa and exactly what she'll do with this meeting. So that'll definitely be fun. Alright, so after Sansa's talk with the Tyrell ladies, we cut to Margaery with Joffrey in his bedroom chamber, and so she and he are talking, and she asks him a lot of questions about Renly and about what she thought of Renly and, why she was with him. And so he does start to ask her the kind of questions that Cersei, says, you should be asking her. And so he starts getting cagey, but the thing is that Margaery is a lot smarter than Joffrey, so pretty much, she just tells him what Joffrey wants to hear without making herself look bad or suspicious, and then eventually, she just assuages his ego, and, so she plays him really well, so, she gets out of it really quickly, and she admires his crossbow, and he's trying to impress her and stuff, so, and that was pretty interesting to watch, but it's like, she just knows how to play him like a fiddle, and I think that's probably just because Margaery probably just knows how to play men in general, and I have a feeling, that her mom and her grandmother probably told her, like, this is what you need to do to deal with men. It's like, you live in a man's world, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to, you know, manipulate things into, like, you can totally manipulate things into your favor. So that was definitely interesting to see. So after we get done with that, we go back to Bran, and he's alone in the woods with the wildling woman, and then he gets approached by the boy that he saw in his dream, who introduces himself. But first, the wildling woman threatens to kill him, but then his sister comes up behind him, and so he introduces himself after his sister convinces the wildling woman to drop her spear, and he convinces the wolf Summer that things are okay. So, and then he introduces himself as Jojen Reed, and he talks to Bran, and he's like, I know who you are. He's like, I know you're Brandon Stark, and it's like me and my sister came a long way to find you, and we still have a long way to go. So they end up tag teaming with Bran, and so in a little bit later we actually find out Jojen explaining that he is a warg, and um and what he can do, and he also explains what the Raven is to Bran, and he explains that the Raven is a sign that you can see various points and at time and at various places, and so that Bran and Jojen compare notes about their magic psychic abilities, and then Jojen's sister talks to the wildling woman, and and the wildling woman's like, your brother must not be rather pathetic if he needs his sister to take care of him, and his and that's kind of problematic. And she says, well, not really. It's like, I don't mind taking care of him. And she mentions to the wildling woman, it's like, there's some people who will always need people to take care of them, but that doesn't mean that those people aren't worth taking care of. So, and I think that was an interesting conversation between them. It's like, just because you're a physically weak person doesn't mean that you're not a worthwhile person, and it doesn't mean that you don't bring things to the table. And that was certainly a very interesting, ethical conversation, because I think we can tell a lot from with what we've seen of the wildling, but also of what we see of other people in Westeros, that they do really value physical strength above all else, and that they don't really see people who can't do that as being important, which I think explains a lot of their treatment of people like Tyrion, who are disabled, or are women who often aren't very good soldiers. And I think it's interesting how Jojen's sister points out to the wildling woman that it's like, just because you're not a badass warrior doesn't mean that you're not important. So that was really interesting. So then after that happens, uh we jump to Arya and her gang, and they're palling around in the woods, and so they end up getting in I think Gregory is his name, points out to Sansa, it's like, you had the Jockin guy gave you 3 kills, and it's like, you could have used them to kill anybody. And she's like, well, why are you riding my ass about this now? We got out of Harrenhal because of that guy. It's like, you could have had him kill King Joffrey, Tywin Lannister, anybody. It's like, he could have ended the war for you. And it's like, you just had him kill a bunch of fuckers at Harrenhal. It's like, he could have killed anybody. And but after that happens, they end up getting captured by the Brother Without Borders, I believe, who are the people that Tywin was looking for. So it turns out that they're kind of like a rebel group, or who think that the nobles are pretty much just running amok, and that their shenanigans are hurting the country. And I think either a little bit before that or after that, we had this flashback with obviously with Jaime Lannister and Brienne, where they're walking around and they're trying to make their way to King's Landing. So we see them doing that. And on one part of their journey where they're in the woods, they come across this guy with a cart who talks to him for a little bit. And then Jaime tells Brienne, like, it's like that guy recognizes me, and she's like, no, she doesn't, and he's like, and he goes off, and she's like, I'm not gonna kill him because he's an innocent guy, and so they let him go. So then, obviously we cut back to Arya and her gang with the band of brothers, and so they have a little talk. And Arya really tries to talk tough, but like the guys aren't buying it, and like Arya's definitely outnumbered and outclassed by these guys, so they end up essentially overpowering them, but not really harming them, and they take them to their outpost, and they give them a meal, and the leader of the Brothers Without Borders kind of asked him, like, well, how did you get out of Harrenhal? Because it's obvious that, you don't have any fighting experience that could justify you being able to do that. And so she's like, well, my friend here's Gregory's Smith. So, and they asked him, well, where did you learn to do that? And he said, from King's Landing, and he explains that. But, like, they're not buying it. And so and just sounds like Arya's like, well, we all know how to use swords and stuff, and she pulls out her sword to use it, but the leader quickly disarms her, and she was like, and he's like, I hope you enjoy your meal, but it's like, because it's probably going to be your last, but you're free to go. And so Arya questions him a little bit, but right as that happens, the Hound, like they get this guy that they captured, and it turns out that they unmask him, and it's the Hound. Um, and so Arya's like, oh shit. So she has her companion sneak out, but before she can sneak out, the Hound saw her, and he asked the Brothers Without Borders, like, what are you doing with the Stark bitch? So it's like, so Arya's gotten caught. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, since obviously the Hound's on the run, I guess. But it will be interesting to kind of see what the Brothers Without Banners does, since they're obviously really critical of the aristocrats that run the country. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Is Arya gonna be okay, or are they gonna turn her in, or are they gonna like try to kill her, or what are they gonna have her do? So that'll definitely be interesting to see how that works. And then after that happens, we end up cutting back to Jaime and Brienne as they're trying to cross this river. So they go over this bridge, and Jaime's starting some shit, and he's like, oh, I can't go on, and I gotta sit down, and I'm getting corns. And then pretty much he gets himself loose, and he and Brienne get in a sword fight. And at first, Jaime is getting really cocky. He's talking a lot of shit because he thinks, he's gonna kick Brienne's ass. And it turns out that is not the case. That she ends up kicking his ass. And you can kind of tell, like, he's really surprised how much she is kicking his ass. Although, in fairness, Jaime is really haggard, and I think he's been out of practice. So, I don't know. I really would like to see, the two of them fight each other when they're both on equal terms, like when both of them have had time to polish their craft and to really see who can, do it, because I think, Brienne won this round, but I think, Jaime was a little tired, so it would be interesting to see them fight as equals. So, but before she can subdue him again, a bunch of knights come in. They're obviously Robb's knights, because we see them earlier in the episode as they're on their way to his grandfather's funeral. And so, honestly, I don't know if they're going to get away or if they're going to be recaptured by Robb's forces. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out. Especially considering what's happening with Arya. So that'll be especially with the stuff with Sansa, because Sansa looks like she's gonna leave with Littlefinger, and she's not married to Joffrey anymore. And I think Sansa might be captured. So it'll be interesting. Are they good to see if they're gonna recapture, you know, Jaime and Bran? So that'll be interesting to see how that works. And also while that was happening, we saw Theon a couple times throughout the episode. And and we saw him getting tortured. And apparently his sister's one of his sister's men is gonna free him, but that's pretty much what happens with Theon. And I'm not sure who he's gotten captured by, because I don't think it might be his own men, but I have a feeling it might be someone else. So honestly, I'm not sure who's got him, but right now he's a prisoner of somebody and he's getting captured. So he did that throughout we saw him a little bit throughout most of the episode. But back to Brienne and Jaime. So they ended up, obviously, like I said, getting caught by Robb's bannermen, and so that's how the episode ended. So, and like I said, I'm pretty interested in seeing how they're gonna do, what they're gonna do with that. Are they gonna get away and fight all these guys, or are they gonna get captured again? So that'll definitely be interesting. So I'm interested to see how that's gonna work out. So with that said, this has been a review of Game of Thrones season 3 episode 2, and I'll definitely like to hear what you guys have to think about this episode. So make sure to comment, rate, and subscribe. But again, no spoiler comments, because I haven't read the book. I just watched the TV show. And not everybody who's gonna watch this or read the comments has read the book. So no spoiler comments, because those aren't cool. But like I said, I want to hear what you guys think. So again, make sure to comment, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.